The air conditioning in the Lekki duplex hummed a cold, unfeeling tune. Outside, Lagos sweated and screamed, but inside, in the polished marble quiet of the Oba's home, the silence was its own kind of scream. Esther sat, perfectly dressed in crisp linen, a financial report spread across her lap, but her eyes saw only the emptiness of the nursery next door. "Daniel, we must decide," she said, her voice dry, like rustling paper. Daniel, Dan, big-bodied and successful, shifted uncomfortably in his Italian leather chair. "Esther, Baiko," he started, using the Igbo word for please, even though he was Yoruba, a habit he picked up from his business partner. "Let us pray more. God's time is the best." Esther threw the report onto the glass table. "God's time has been 12 years, Daniel. 12 years of needles, hormones, Lagos doctors telling me my lining is thin, and foreign doctors telling me my eggs are old. The church calls me a mother-in-waiting, but the village calls me barren." She walked to the massive window, looking out over the Atlantic. They had everything: wealth, status, respect. The only thing missing was the small, loud, irreplaceable presence of a child, the food that proved the tree was rooted. The pressure was a physical weight. Every family meeting, every wedding, every innocent question from a colleague about their next step felt like a stone hitting her chest. Daniel stood, putting an arm around her shoulder. "We will get the child. Remember what Ton told us. The modern way. Surrogacy." Esther flinched at the word. It felt clinical, a last, desperate transaction. But Ton, their lawyer friend, had been clear. They needed someone young, healthy, and, crucially, discreet. Someone with no ties to their ward, someone who saw the exchange not as a miracle, but as a business opportunity. "We go to the village, Daniel. Far from here. Far from the gossip." Ilesanmi was 6 hours inland, past Ibadan, where the asphalt faded to dusty red earth and the air lost its salty tang, becoming thick with the smell of wood smoke and kola nuts. The Oba's convoy, a gleaming black SUV that screamed money, looked absurd parked outside the mud brick compound of the village elder. The elder, a man named Chief Aloni, introduced them to Ada. Ada was 23, strong, with arms accustomed to hauling water and cassava. Her beauty was raw, practical, and unsoftened by the city. She wore a simple wrapper tied above her waist and observed the Obas with steady, unblinking eyes. Daniel offered a friendly, nervous smile. "We are grateful you considered this, Ada." Ada didn't smile back. "Chief Aloni has explained the business. I am doing this for my mother's roof and my brother's school fees. I will carry the baby. You will pay the money. That is all I need to know." Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion, like a stone skipping water. She spoke in Nigerian pidgin, sharp and to the point. Esther, used to the effusive politeness of Lagos society, was taken aback. This was not the grateful, teary-eyed young woman she had imagined. Ada looked like a contractor, ready to fulfill a job order. "The total sum, as agreed, is substantial," Daniel reiterated, placing the contract on the table. "A portion now, and the final bulk upon delivery, full and safe. The child is ours, conceived by our seed and our egg. You are the carrier only." Ada finally spoke, her eyes flickering to the payment schedule. "I understand. The baby is yours. The work is mine. When do we start the tests?" She signed the papers with a crisp thumbprint, the ink a dark smudge against the pristine white document. She acted as if she were selling a sack of beans, not lending her entire body for 9 months. Esther found it disturbing, yet reassuring. Ada was just business. There would be no emotional attachment to sever later. Ada was relocated to a simple, clean 2-room apartment in a quiet suburb of Lagos, far from Lekki, but close enough for hospital visits. Esther employed a house help to cook and clean for Ada, and a driver to take her to weekly checkups. The initial transfer worked perfectly. Esther's embryo, a tiny, fragile promise of the future, took root in Ada's fertile womb. As the weeks turned into months, Esther tried to manage the situation, but the complexity was a constant, dull ache. She would visit Ada, bringing expensive vitamins, designer maternity clothes, which Ada refused to wear, preferring her simple, comfortable wrappers, and baby things. See, Ada, Esther said one day, holding up a tiny cashmere booty. I bought this for him. We will call him Jesse. A name meaning gift or grace. Ada looked at the booty, then back at the television showing a Nollywood drama. It is too much expense for a baby that will only wear it for 2 weeks. But thank you, Ma. You don't have to call me a Ma. We are family now, in a way. Ada chuckled, a short, dry sound. Family. Oh. Ma, let us not confuse things. You are the client. I am the worker. The contract says you pay me to carry your son. When I give you the son, the transaction is finished. I take my money, I go fix my village roof. Simple business. This cold, hard refusal to sentimentalize the pregnancy was Ada's shield. She ate Esther's imported food, she went to the doctors, she rested and nurtured the growing life within her, but her mind was always back in Ilesami, calculating the cost of cement and the fees for her younger siblings. She was renting out a space, nothing more. Esther felt a deep, resentful jealousy. It wasn't fair that this woman, who didn't even want the child, could carry it with such effortless strength, while Esther's own body had failed her so miserably. This bitterness festered, making Esther keep her distance, even as the bump grew beautifully round and perfect. The labor started dramatically, just as Ada was finishing a massive bowl of EBA and vegetable soup. The driver rushed her to the private hospital in Ikeja. Daniel and Esther arrived, breathless with terror and excitement. The delivery was long but successful. Ada's powerful body handled the stress with a warrior's resilience. When the cry finally came, it was not the wail of a child, but the collective gasp of two exhausted, grateful people. Daniel wept openly. Esther stood at the glass wall of the nursery, touching the tiny hand of her son, Jesse. My joy has come. In the recovery room, Ada looked exhausted, but her eyes were clear. Esther, overwhelmed by a rush of gratitude, leaned over the bed. Ada, thank you. You have given us life. We will pay you extra, truly. You have done well. Ada nodded, her gaze fixed on the corner of the room. You are welcome. The contract is finished now. I am ready to be discharged. And the balance? Yes. Of course, the balance. Daniel, practical even in his joy, had arrived with a large canvas duffel bag. It was heavy, packed tight with naira notes, crisp and new. He placed it on the floor beside Ada's bed. Here it is, Ada. The final, full payment. More than enough to build a new house and set up that shop you spoke of. Ada looked at the bag. The money. The money for the roof, for the school, for escaping the endless cycle of poverty in Ilesami. Her face remained impassive. Thank you, sir. The next morning, Jesse was formally discharged. Daniel and Esther dressed him in a pristine white outfit. The hospital staff knew the arrangement and were discreet. Ada was discharged the same morning. She changed into her wrapper, collected her meager belongings, and paused by the door to the wing where Esther was waiting with the baby. Daniel was on a quick call outside the room. Esther stood near the window, rocking her son, whispering sweet, broken prayers of thanks into his small head. The duffel bag of cash was resting on the small bench beside Ada. Ma, Ada called out. Esther turned, a soft, motherly expression on her face for the first time in years. Ada walked slowly towards Esther. She reached out and gently took Jesse from Esther's arms, holding the boy against her chest. Esther thought it was a gesture of farewell, a moment of closure before the woman left their lives forever. But Ada's eyes had changed. The transactional coldness was replaced by a fierce, primal intensity. In 9 months, she hadn't bonded with the client's child, but with life itself. She had felt every kick, every flutter, every heartbeat within her. She was the one who had suffered the pain, who had labored. In the village, the carrier was the mother. The money had paid for the service, but the child felt like a piece of her soul. No, Ma, Ada said, her voice low and hard, laced with a new dialect, the local language of her spirit. I carried him. I birthed him. The money is for the pain. The baby is mine. Esther stared, her brain refusing to process the words. Ada, what are you saying? This is our son. We paid you. You paid me to rent my womb, Ada hissed, clutching Jessie tighter. But you cannot buy the soul. I am the mother. In a flash, Ada spun around, snatched the duffel bag of cash, and sprinted down the hallway. The hospital wing exploded into chaos. Esther screamed, a primal sound of utter devastation. Daniel rushed back in, seeing the empty space where his son should have been. She took him. She took the money and Jessie. The thief. Esther shrieked, collapsing against Daniel. Daniel, the man of business, tried to be rational. He called security, then the police. But Esther was gone. She was already tearing down the stairs, driven by a madness that replaced logic. Ada was fast. She knew Lagos. She headed straight for the motor park, the chaotic hub where local and interstate bush taxis loaded passengers like sardines. She melted into the throng of market women, beggars, and travelers, the duffel bag slung over her shoulder, the baby a tiny, silent bundle against her chest. Esther reached the main road, heart hammering against her ribs, her breath ragged. She saw the flash of Ada's wrapper disappearing into the melee of the motor park. Esther didn't wait. She jumped into her own car, the powerful SUV that represented all her city life and privilege. She knew where Ada would go. Back to Ile-Sanmi. Back to the anonymity of the deep bush. She swerved the car onto the busy expressway, ignoring the honks, the shouts, the sheer danger of her driving. She drove with reckless, animalistic desperation, merging the lanes of wealth and power onto the dusty, unforgiving road that led back to the source of their mistake. Ada found a taxi heading to Ibadan, the first leg of the journey home. She squeezed into the back, the money bag between her feet, Jessie asleep in her arms. She looked out the window, watching the city disappear behind the smog, a mix of triumph, fear, and a strange, cold resolve on her face. I will be the mother now. Esther drove like a woman possessed, the speedometer needle dancing wildly. She pictured her son, innocent, in the hands of that treacherous woman. The pain was unbearable, a physical fire in her belly. She spotted the bus. A dark green bus, overloaded, lumbering in the slow lane. Esther slammed her foot down. She had to overtake, she had to stop them. The road was narrow here, a single lane in each direction, carved through dry, scrubby land. A massive truck was approaching fast from the opposite direction. Esther didn't see the truck. She only saw the green bus, and the woman inside. She swerved aggressively into the opposite lane, tires screaming, the powerful engine roaring in protest. She tried to cut in front of the bus. The truck driver blasted his horn, a loud, desperate bellow that split the air. In the back of the green bus, Ada looked up, seeing the black SUV hurtling towards them. She saw Esther's face, a mask of pure, screaming terror and rage. Ada instinctively shielded the baby. There was no time for break or swerve. The impact was catastrophic. A sound like the sky tearing open. Metal crumpled like paper. Glass exploded in a blinding sheet. The truck driver tried to avoid the collision, sending his vehicle into a chaotic skid that took out the green bus's rear axle. Esther's expensive SUV was crushed, unrecognizable. She died instantly, her body mangled by the twisted steel. The force of the impact was so great that the small body of Jessie, the child of 12 years of waiting, was flung from Ada's arms and struck the side of the bus interior, ending his life just as it had begun. Ada was knocked unconscious, but she survived. The duffel bag of cash, scattered and stained, lay around her feet. When the dust settled and the screams began, there was a shocking, empty silence where the Obo's joy had been. It was Daniel who arrived hours later, driven by Tond, finding the wreckage and the unspeakable, cold finality. The police found the baby's tiny body and Esther's lifeless form. The modern solution, the transactional arrangement, had been consumed by an ancient, primal greed and the reckless despair of the human heart. Daniel was left with no child, no wife, and only the empty echo of the Lagos mansion. The price of joy, he realized, was sometimes everything.